Well, after the 2025 elections, Democrats took control of Virginia's governor's mansion, the lieutenant governor, the attorney general, the Senate, and the General Assembly. Since January, they've proposed dozens of new taxes, a new definition of marriage, an amendment legalizing abortion right up until birth. CBN's Washington correspondent Jenna Browder reports.
I, Abigail Spanberger, do solemnly swear.
Virginia is going blue, deep blue. Between Governor Abigail Spanberger and the entire legislature, Democrats are in charge and planning sweeping changes. On day one, Spanberger, who campaigned as a moderate, signed a number of executive orders. One keeping state and local police from cooperating with ICE.
State and local law enforcement should not be required to divert their limited resources to enforce federal civil immigration laws.
In the legislature, lawmakers have proposed a number of measures, including 4 ballot amendments for voters to consider. The first would make abortion legal up until birth. Right now, it's legal until 27 weeks. Victoria Cobb is president of the Family Foundation and tells CBN News this would have devastating consequences.
Virginians deserve so much better than a radical rewrite of our Constitution that takes a state that has already lost, just last year, 38,000 unborn lives, and actually works to make it even more permissible for abortion, that actually removes more guardrails, such as simply having safety standards, having parental consent when a young girl considers an abortion, and making late-term abortion elective. That's devastating in our Commonwealth. It'll be devastating to the unborn, but it's devastating to women that there will be no protections around them either.
Another ballot amendment would create protections for marriage equality, which may sound benign, but isn't, according to Cobb.
What they are trying to do is not simply rewrite the definition of marriage in our Constitution, but because they're saying that marriage in this constitutional amendment would be between any two people of any sex, gender. By saying that those are two different things, what they're trying to do is actually put into our Constitution the idea of transgender ideology. Not only will that cement same-sex marriage in the Commonwealth permanently, but more than that, when we go to have battles over whether boys can play in girls' sports, who can be in locker rooms, what pronouns get used, there are going to be people who point to that Constitution and demand that they have a right, that their sex and their gender are two different things.
Democrats would also like voters to consider an amendment for redistricting ahead of the November midterms. Right now, Democrats represent 6 of Virginia's districts in Washington. Republicans represent 5. The proposed redistricting would change that, so Democrats have 10 districts and Republicans 1. A Virginia judge struck down the amendment, and Democrats are appealing.
They basically want to silence the voices of the, roughly 45% of Virginians who identify as Republicans. So it's like they just want to erase us from the state.
Katie Gorka, chair of Fairfax GOP, is deeply concerned about the effort. She's also alarmed by the proposed changes in voting law. As it stands, 92% of Virginians are registered to vote. That's nearly 20 points higher than the national average.
And rather than sort of try to restore people's confidence in the voting system, the Democrats are implementing all kinds of measures that just make no sense. So as it is, they want to allow people to vote electronically through the internet. I mean, oh yeah, what could go wrong there?
Democrats also want to extend the time absentee ballots can be received after Election Day to 3 days. And make it illegal for ICE to be within 40 feet of a polling place.
Anybody with common sense is going to say, those things aren't there to protect election integrity. Those types of changes are there to get away with cheating.
And there are new tax proposals. This clip from WJLA's Nick Minock went viral.
They include additional local sales tax in all Virginia counties and cities, new personal property tax on electric leaf blowers and electric landscaping equipment, large employer tax, gun and ammunition tax, new income tax brackets, a delivery tax. This would hit you if you make an order on Amazon, Uber Eats, or an order that includes UPS, FedEx delivery, etc. here in Northern Virginia.
In total, Virginia Democrats are calling for more than 50 new taxes. And if new tax brackets are enacted, The changes would raise Virginia's top effective income tax rate to roughly 13.8%, surpassing all other states. Asked about the proposed taxes, President Trump responded.
Flaring is terrible. I think a lot of people will leave Virginia.
Currently, Virginia has a $2.7 billion surplus. Democrats are proposing $6.7 billion in tax increases. They say the surplus will likely go toward Medicaid costs and the new revenue they're hoping to produce to things like K-12 education and Metro.
These are so far beyond even sort of what you would call purple state policies. These are extreme left wing. I mean, people are talking about New York City and Mandami, but I'll tell you that these policies are the type that you would see put forward by straightforward socialist politicians.
Virginia Democrats are also proposing changes to how the state handles crime. One measure would lower the criminal penalty for robbery. Another would remove mandatory minimum sentences. And we could soon see communities install speed cameras. We will wait to see which measures make it through the legislature and which ones Governor Spanberger chooses to sign. In Washington, Jenna Browder, CBN News.
It's like they've gone crazy, and it just kind of boggles my mind. Why in the world would you want to tax leaf blowers? Where is that making any sense? Just the sheer mechanism of that would cost more than the tax would raise. You know, you're going to have to establish values for aging leaf blowers. And then is that an annual tax? What is that? Is that an additional sales tax? But again, why? What are you trying to do? The state already has a surplus that is absolutely incredible, and that's because of Youngkin. And with that surplus, you're going to say we need even more taxes to do what? It absolutely makes no sense to me. But here's the thing, when you have ideologues, and they're on both sides and in both parties, but when you have the progressives now running the agenda, here's what you're going to end up with. You're going to get constitutional amendments, state constitutional amendments, saying abortion is okay all the way to the day of birth. You're going to have gender ideology written into the state constitution. You're going to go on warfare against the wealthy and tax them at 13.5%. We already see what the wealthy are doing when you do that. They move away because they have the capacity to do that. California is losing their wealthy because the taxes are unsustainable and they're going to tax havens. They're moving to Florida. Do we really want that in Virginia? Do we want our high earners saying, well, if you're going to tax me at that rate, I can go somewhere else, get lower taxes, and have a better life? That's what they'll do. There's an old adage in economic circles, I've never been employed by a poor person. If you want more jobs, if you want economic growth, then please give people incentive to earn money right where they are. When you do that, you have a flourishing economy, you have a flourishing state, and you have wonderful things happening. When you add to the tax burden, particularly these kinds of taxes, start thinking about every Amazon delivery you get, every FedEx delivery, every UPS delivery. The state is now going to add a tax to that. That's the proposal that's currently in committee. The state will add a tax to that. What does that do to affordability? What does that do to your monthly expenses? Well, it drives everything up. I remind the government that got elected in Virginia, you got elected for two reasons. One, President Trump decided to cut back the federal workforce, and so a lot of people got unemployed in Northern Virginia, and they didn't like it, and so they not voted against the Republicans of Virginia, they voted against the Republicans in Washington. Then inflation was killing people and killing people's monthly budget, and you promised affordability. Now you're going to come in and say, well, I'm sorry, I didn't really mean that. We need more tax income. $2.5 billion in surplus isn't enough. We got to have more than $6 billion in surplus so that we can spend more money at the state level. Well, that's going to impact pocketbooks. And the great thing about America, there's always an election just around the